At the outset, I bow down at the lotus feet of love incarnate Param Premamoy Shri Shri Thakur Anukul Chandra. I bow down before Paramaradhya Jagat Janani Shri Shri Bodama. I bow down before Param Pujyapat Shri Shri Borda. And I bow down before the guide exemplar Param Pujyapat Acharya Dev Shri Shri Dada. My heart is Jai Guru, love and regard to all the ideal adherents and lovers of existence. Can't express how immensely fortunate I feel to be able to express the existential views on the eternal path of light and life. As we celebrate the 133rd Holy Birth Anniversary of our Love Lord, the King of our hearts, Param Premamoy Shri Shri Thakur Anukul Chandra. The Divine has descended down in flesh and blood as the Savior of mankind, as the Savior of humanity, as the Savior of creation, to guide each one of us on the eternal path of light and life, being and becoming. And even after him leaving his mortal frame more than half a century ago, the Divine place is still at work through the Acharya, who is ever alert, ever awake, lest we should slip off the path of light and life. Thakur is the living embodiment of love, the love incarnate, the living embodiment of existence, the living embodiment of being and becoming, the living embodiment of light and life. How else can one describe him but as the human manifestation of love, who as a child on a chilly winter day, with the only woolen piece of cloth around him covering him from the chilly winter, when he goes and sees his classmates sitting on the cold floor, doesn't hesitate even for a moment to cut it into pieces and spread it on the floor so that his friends don't need to suffer. How else can we describe the personality who, on a stormy day, when people were scared to even put a step outside their shelters, goes out running? Why? Because some elderly blind man in the distance had fallen in a ditch. His feeble physical strength unable to withstand the gush of wind and water. Thakur goes, pulls him out of the ditch, walks him home safely. And the man proclaims, "You are my Lord. Who else is there to come at this hour and save me?" How else to describe the personality who, as a child, when walking back home on that stormy day, when he sees a hawk withered by storm, comes and alights himself on his shoulders, Thakur stands still to give sufficient rest to the withered hawk, and walks again only after hawk has taken sufficient rest and flies again. How else to explain his love, who, while going to school to deposit his examination fees with the confined financial resources that he had, finds his friend weeping. Upon inquiry, finds out that the friend doesn't have money to deposit his school fees, examination fees. Thakur goes to his school and deposits fees in the name of his friend, and is not worried even in a bit, not bothered even a bit. Rather, he is in extreme joy seeing the success of his friend. How else to define him than the living embodiment of love? The personality who, because of the financial constraints during his student days, used to live along with coal mine workers who were unaware of the life principles of health and hygiene. In their absence, Thakur used to wash their clothes because these principles of health and hygiene were unknown to them. Thakur used to wash their toilets so that none should suffer. None should fall ill. He could not withstand the sufferings of others, even in the least. How else to define the magnetic charm? The embodiment of existence that he was. As he had very few pennies left with him, hardly enough for a meal, finds out his friend is in financial distress, goes out and gives whatever he had to help his friend. And as a result, had to spend the next couple of few days without food, just drinking the water running out of a tap. That is the personality we celebrate today, who has descended to save each one of us, the entire humankind, the entire creation, out of the clutches of our passion-tainted ways, so that we lead a life of bliss. Satsang, the organization which we understand, know today as the man-making institution, was never a conscious effort to build an organization as such. It has naturally evolved out of the magnetic personality of Shashi Thakur, out of his innate urge to save each one of us, to help each one of us evolve the personality which the Almighty wants us to become. It is rightly said, a man is created by God out of his own image. We are all minuscule forms of the same Almighty. We are all minuscule images of the Father, the Supreme. As the dew is able to hold sun within itself, so each one of us have potential to awaken Him within us. What is it that we as humans hanker for? Each one of us, the basics within whatever we do, the intention always lies at the basics of existence and growth. Each one of us want to exist and then to grow. And it is only these hankering with which whatever we do, all our actions are intended to achieve this. And our passions are intended to help us, serve us achieve this. When we are born, God sends us with intellect, conscience and passions. Passions to help us achieve evolution. Passions to help us translate our potential, our possibilities into reality. But on the contrary, when we become subservient to these passions, when the passions starts guiding us, when we no longer have control over them, that is when we become self-centered. That is when the road to evolution is obstructed. Because when we become self-centered, thereafter we can do no good either to ourselves or to our environment. So to harness the potential to the fullest, we will need to hold on to the living embodiment of that achievement, the human manifestation of that evolution. As kindness can only be perceived by seeing a person in which kindness has been realized by a kind person. So, evolution, perfection can be achieved only by active attachment to the perfect soul, to one who has achieved that perfection. That immense potential, possibilities that God has bestowed us with can only be attained through active serviceable adherence to man, in which these attributes have been normally achieved, realized. I'd like to quote the famous Nobel laureate, Dr. Alexis Carrel. He says, "It is impossible to love an abstraction. One will sacrifice oneself for one's leader, but not for an idea." Man will never enthusiastically obey the laws of rational conduct unless he considers the laws of life as the commands of a personal God. We need a God who hears us, loves us, and responds to us. This is precisely the reason. We could ask, why hold on to Thakur? Why there is a need for a living guide? This is precisely the reason we need someone who is not merely confined in a photograph, who is not merely a topic of an intellectual tabletop discussion. If we need to achieve perfection, if we need to evolve, we'll need to actively attach ourselves to a living embodiment of that evolution, living embodiment of that realization of potential into reality. As a sports person evolves only after an active adherence, surrender to a coach. The doer is always the self. But unless there is a surrender to a guide who is able to lead him towards reality, lead him towards the translation of possibility into reality, success does not come. So we as humans, if we have to come out of our entanglement of passion-tainted walk in life, we will need to do the way it can be achieved. We'll need to hold on to the living guide who is the cause of all the causes. Knowing him, nothing remains to be known. Who's the human manifestation of perfection? Who is the upholding urge of all that exists? Merely appreciating him is not going to serve any purpose. We'll need to understand how to achieve bliss. And for that, we'll need to sow him within us, so as he prospers. We'll need to give him that privilege to be able to guide and goad us towards light and life. To reap the fruits, we'll need to sow the supreme consciousness of all the creation. Let us come, hold on to Thakur, get initiated, surrender, and achieve him through active serviceable adherence. There are thousands of scriptures, thousands of pious literature, each filled with all the ways of achieving bliss, without demeaning or belittling any one of them. Let us introspect how much of it has ever been able to bring about the transformation that we desire out of us. The transformation is only possible through love and love alone, active serviceable adherence. Thakur says, a man is shaped and fashioned by what he loves. Let us introspect. Through the time that our conscious memory allows us to go back, any adjustment that has ever happened, which is blissful, becoming, and sustainable, has only been through a loving attachment for someone. Let us allow him to occupy the throne within. Let us ensure he is awakened within, because Thakur is not an idea. Thakur is not the God in the skies. Thakur is not the God confined within the frames of a photograph. Thakur is the cause of all that exists, cause All that exists, Thakur is the consciousness of all the creation. And to achieve bliss, to achieve that supreme consciousness, all we need to do is to awaken him within each one of us. To awaken and realize him within us. Which would be possible not through discussions and debates and deliberations alone, but through showing him within us. Through being initiated, through surrendering, through allowing him to be the coach of my life, through giving him that privilege to harness the potential that I stand for, that Lord has bestowed with me with. And that alone will allow him and will allow me to translate the potential, the possibilities with the Almighty, with the Father, the Supreme has bestowed us with, be translated into reality. With these words, I pray at the lotus feet of the Almighty that He bestows each one of us, one and all, with peace and blissful becoming. Vande Purushottamam, adorations to fulfill the best.